So we are back for another Mental Health Monday with The Refuge during COVID-19. This has been Joe Rainey and I's little experiment of just creating a space where we could gather a little hope for the journey, a little encouragement, tools, ideas, reminders, things that could help us last in this really difficult time that none of us would have expected a chunk of months ago. We've been doing this now for 4 months, COVID-19. Some of you maybe a little longer depending on where you're listening from, but in Colorado where we're hubbed, it has been almost exactly 4 months. A little bit over, and we're tired, and this is hard, and we need to keep finding ways to last. So Joe Rainey and I are with The Refuge, and we're here today with our friend Scott McBean. And Scott McBean is in Richmond, Virginia, and is a friend of The Refuge. And his mom, Teresa McBean, and Scott came to The Refuge several years ago and did an amazing workshop for us, centered on recovery, because they co-pastor a community in Richmond called North Star Community. And they are like sister connection to The Refuge. And we have a really similar heart. And embedded in their work is recovery. So the 12 steps as a path to something different, and really coming alongside families who are traveling the road of addiction in different ways for support, ways to integrate that the 12 steps are a natural part of healing. They're not only for a certain kind of people, they're for all of us. And so in addition to being a pastor, he is also now working on a master's in mental health counseling. So he's in the thick of it on that, despite COVID, and trying to finish that up and continue to offer out to the world support. And one really fun thing that I just want to add is that they're working on an intensive outpatient program through North Star, which is a really rare thing to be integrated and part of a faith community's work in the world. And so I just love hearing that today, Scott. So we're glad to have you with us. Thanks for listening in. And we hope always that you can just glean something that you need today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Just a reminder too that there's discussion questions that are in the description box on YouTube and in the show notes on Spotify. So I really encourage you to engage with the content for whatever Scott is going to be bringing us today. I'm excited to hear. So take it away.
Yeah, I must confess, I don't know how formal people normally are doing this, but I just wanted to share, I guess, a little bit about what I've been thinking about both personally and professionally lately, which is, obviously COVID is shaping how we think about everything. And I have been spending a lot of time thinking about how people change, right? Because in part, that's because we're trying to develop a curriculum that will work for an outpatient treatment center. So when you go from using a substance to not using a substance, that's a major life change. So we've been trying to pay attention to research on how people change and yada, yada, yada. I could probably ramble on that for way too long. But also as part of my degree in becoming a mental health counselor, you kind of have to study the history of psychology and all of that good stuff. And so a character who really resonated with me in that study is Carl Rogers. And Carl Rogers, a very, very simple version, sort of believes that people change when they're accepted as they are. That people don't tend to change if they're forced to change or if they're shamed into changing. But if they're really accepted, people tend to move in a positive direction. And I have found that to be really inspiring. But I also find it was a very countercultural message at the time. And I still suspect it's a very countercultural message that in order for people to move in a positive direction, they have to be accepted and embraced. And I've been thinking about this on several levels. I've been thinking about how do we create a program where people are brought in and given a hug rather than scolded, right? How do we set up a system where that's the vibe that you get from top to bottom? But then I've also been thinking about that in other areas, and obviously we have a lot going on in our culture. And I came across a story that's been circulating the internet about Dave Chapelle. And I love Dave Chapelle for any number of reasons, as probably most people who listen to this do. Maybe, I don't know who you are, but Dave seems like a great guy. I don't know him. But there's this story of him being at a show and sharing something about race relations in our country, and he gets heckled by a woman in the audience. And he uses that opportunity to kind of move away from doing straight up stand-up comedy into kind of educating about the history of race relations in our country. And after the show, somebody comes backstage and sort of asks him, hey, this idiot who is heckling you wants to talk to you. Should I send her away? And he's like, no, bring her in. And he brought her in, and she said, you changed me. And I'm giving you the quick and dirty version of the story. You can look it up for yourself if you want to know all of the details. But essentially, she wanted to apologize to him and say, I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. You changed me. And he said, that's great. That's wonderful. I'm glad you're on the team. Here's a hug. Come in for a picture. Bring your friend. Now you're part of the solution. And I thought that is such a countercultural way of handling that situation. When we're told to scold and shame and isolate and exclude, these are often our solutions to problems. And that graciousness that he is able to show in that story to me reminded me of what Rogers was teaching back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And we had a situation this morning in our church service. I'm a pastor. We had somebody on our Zoom call use a derogatory word. And I freaked out on the inside, not on the outside, but somebody used a derogatory term about a certain group of people. And it was quite near the end of the service. And so we quickly sort of ended the service because it was headed that way anyway. And it just seemed like the easiest way to get out of that situation. And then I spent a few minutes thinking, how am I going to handle this? What should I do about this? What is the appropriate response? And I was thinking, like, how should I punish him? And that's not really what I was thinking, but it's kind of how your mind goes. And I got a text message within 15 minutes of the call ending saying, I said something I shouldn't have said. I was nervous. I hate that word. I hate that I said it. I don't feel that way about this group of people. I totally understand. If you want me to come on and apologize, I will. If I needed to be excluded from the group from here on out, I totally understand. I will not come back if that's what you tell me I need. And it was just so much to take in. And my response was, and I don't know if it's the right response, but in everything that I've been thinking about, what I said was, we love having you. It's important for you to be here. I love the fact that you're willing to learn. I love the fact that you're willing to own wrongdoing. I absolutely appreciate the apology, whatever. I don't remember exactly what I said, but thank you for that. And we all know your heart, right? And I don't know if that's the right response or the wrong response, or I don't know when we're supposed to come down harsh or when we're supposed to show grace, but I've been thinking about the fact that from a mental health perspective, but also from a personal perspective, that creating that accepting, warm, gracious environment is so important to people changing. And I don't have a whole lot more than that, and I don't know how long I've been talking, but that's what I've been thinking about, that something so simple as that is so important, both in therapy, but also in our personal individual lives. And it's just meant a lot to me, and I hope it means something to somebody else.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Really appreciate those thoughts. That's yeah, it's very rare right now to have those. Shame is popular, and shaming people is popular, and having those moments of grace where we can accept people as they are, and not to say we accept the wrong or that kind of thing, but challenging. Yeah, and I recognize the difficulty of those Zoom things too, where I had a class last week, a nonviolent communication class, and it was really challenging. I had someone say something that also was not derogatory, but it was towards another classmate, and I was just like, what do I do? Because you're in a group and you're just like, what do you do in these situations? And if we were in person, I just would have pulled them aside after class and been like, so let's chat about this, you know. But but having that experience of, you know, checking yourself and that desire to punish, that punitive thing that we have inside of us versus reaching out, I think is really cool.
Yeah, and it was also a situation where, since I was able to chill for a couple minutes, he wanted to self-correct. You know, it was like, this actually isn't my problem to solve, and I don't need to solve it. And he's able to take care of that himself, and wanted to offer an amends to the entire community. I just thought, beautiful work on his part. You know, that's what I ultimately, I don't think I made that clear enough, but ultimately this was about somebody doing his own really beautiful work of recognizing the importance of just owning what he did, you know?
Yeah, thank you. The part that really strikes me is the theme really in every Mental Health Monday since we started is that somehow, some way we would find grace and openness and unconditional regard and positive regard, like that for ourselves, and also give a break to everybody right now, because it's really hard. It doesn't mean, and you're not saying that at all. It doesn't mean letting off the hook on really important issues, but
Right.
It's a great example to me. What I love hearing it is when you create a culture that has that in it, then it gives room for us to make mistakes and own them and still find love and support. And that is a really rare thing. And that is our hope and heart for all of us listening, is that you could offer yourself unconditional positive regard and self-compassion. And that in whatever ways are stirring in you the gift that we can give to each other right now, it does build connection, and it does bring hope, and it does bring healing, and we need a lot more of that right now. So thank you for that gift. It's really helpful to us. Is there anything that either one of you want to add before we wrap up?
Just real quick, since you guys are both recovery people, I'm not as much in that world. Just, I've been thinking a lot about like where we're at right now with COVID and where we're going, and in relation to the 12 steps of like acceptance, I know is a huge part of recovery. And I just know that this is lasting a lot longer than most people thought, and it's probably going to last. And I just, off the cuff, if there's any, as recovery people, if there's any reflections you have on that concept of acceptance of what's happening, because I think that this resistance that everybody has to our new reality, and is even the fact that so much uncertainty, is going to be really detrimental to mental health in the long run. But if we can come to a place of acceptance that this is with us now, and we don't know how long, but yeah, I don't know if there's anything that comes up with that. I know I'm asking a 5 on the spot.
Yeah.
It's torture.
Yeah, part of how I think about it, like acceptance is also like, I mean, grief is part of recovery, right? And I think about acceptance and grief as being very related concepts. And there's models of grief that say that you have to oscillate between doing things that focus on the loss and doing things that distract you from the loss. And that grief doesn't look just one way, but we have to go back and forth in order to grieve well. Like we can't always be focusing on it. We can't always be distracted from it, and we need both. And I think of this situation kind of like that. We are grieving the loss of normal, right? And then trying to find a new normal. And I think there's times where we have to focus on the losses, and then times where we have to be distracted by it. And I think the distracted piece is like, we often feel guilty when we enter that, because it seems like, I need to be mindful, I need to be present. But distractions can actually be really useful for us.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, I love the thoughts that both of you just shared, just even bringing it up, like how do they fit in here, and just a little piece on that. And it makes me think that part I love about the 12 steps is that it helps us be human.
Mm.
And that part of the problem, and this is, related to the full range from codependency to different kinds of addictions, is that we want to resist our humanness. And so we find a way to cover it up and to cope with the pain. And I think related to COVID, a piece that is really hard is that a whole new group of people, because this is shared across humanity right now, are having to live with the pain that we're not used to.
Mm.
And that is hard. And so if we could just embrace suffering as part of the human experience more naturally, and own it and find ways to cope with it that are healthy, and natural, instead of a way to, take care of it as fast as we can. And so this is a big test for us. And the other part I'll just say about the 12 steps, so we know this, is that, you don't get to 12 and then go, oh, whew, I graduated.
Right.
They're ongoing work. And so this is a long haul. And this is the other metaphor. And how do you do it? You show up, you tell the truth, and you listen to other people's experience, strength, and hope. And you try and notice what's going on inside of you and get some support for it. And so I think it all just fits really beautiful in this conversation, actually, for mental health.
Well, thanks.
Okay, so wrapping up, thank you, Scott. So fun to be with you. We love you and your family and your partner in North Star, Teresa. She came to the Practicing Summer Camp and shared on the practice of healing, and we're still using some of the skills that she brought us that day. And so for those of you listening, we'd love to just have you engage. There's just one thing that you can glean from today. Take it. And since Scott brought up anti-racism work, I do want to get, and the 12 steps came up, I want to give a pitch for Tuesday, August 11th at the Refuge on Zoom, because we're all on Zoom. And we are hosting our friend Melvin Bray, and it is called the 12 Steps of Path to co-creating anti-racist community. And it's a beautiful framework of adapting the 12 steps to anti-racism work. And I just want people to take advantage of it, because it's really rare. This is a rare conversation. The Refuge hosts a 12-step for adult children of Manifest Destiny experimental group in this past year. And these two things fold together. And we have a lot of work to do. And we can also have self-compassion, that for some of us, this is our first entrance in. We're all in different places. We're not going to hit it right. We're going to say dumb things. We're going to screw it up. And we're going to be humble and offer what we can of grace and humanity to each other to help heal, but also find our way to a better path, like the story that you told. That's the better path right there. So thank you for supporting the Refuge, and thanks our friend from joining across the United States. This is this is the positive of COVID. We can connect.
We can connect more.
Thanks
you,
so
Scott.
much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. Bye, friends.